Hello again, and welcome to the channel. Um, I thought I'd do a video today about some of the mistakes people make as international students in Canada. So, this is not just for those of you who are already in the country, but those of you who are also in the process of applying to come study in Canada. Now, I'm taking a quick walk to get my kid from school, and my nose is a little stuffy, so you might catch me breathing from my mouth. But I apologize for that. I hope you hear the audio is clear enough. But that said, getting back to the point on some of the mistakes that should be avoided, and I'm going to talk about them ranging from minor ones to major ones. And I encourage you all to take notice of this. By the way, if this is your first time on my channel, please hit the subscription button to support this channel grow. All right. Yeah, it really doesn't take anything from you to hit that subscription button. So, guys, come on, we can do this. All right. So, the mistake number one is failing to do your research. And for mistake number one, this can be subcategorized into three parts. So, talk about part A, part B, and part C. So, part A is when international students fail to do their research on the schools they will be applying to or have been accepted admission into. And why is this important? Because the type of school you attend will determine whether or not you will be eligible for a postgrad work permit. And for a lot of international students, I think this is super important. So make sure you're looking out for that. Check number one to make sure that it is a DLI school, and number two that a DLI school will give you the chance to be eligible for the study permit in the first place. And then number two, if the school and the program is eligible for the postgrad work permit program. Number two, or part B, is failing to do research on the program of study. Now, this is super important because the program of study you select will determine if what your employability after school. So it is super important that you do some market analysis to see what the market is for the program you're applying to study. Oftentimes, you find some international students applying to some programs simply because it's easier to get into whatsoever. But then the real problem comes in after you've graduated from school. It becomes a real challenge for you to find a job. So make sure to look at the program option. Some programs are great. Um, we can talk about that in a separate video. But then definitely make sure you check the market to see job availability. You could even start by focusing your research, your market research on the in the city that you'll be attending school. And then part C is failing to do your research on the location or the city where you'll be attending school. This is important because you need to know, you know, how best you can survive, the conditions under which you can survive. All through around wherever you find yourself in Canada is going to be cold, but some places are warmer than others, relatively, right? So definitely check to make sure that the location is what you prefer. But then also, oftentimes you find people clustered, a lot of internationals clustered in a city where accommodation becomes a challenge. And this is particularly important because recently I watched a documentary by W5, one of the channels in Canada, about a school which I won't mention, where there were too many international students, particularly from India, that they couldn't find accommodation. The school had over admitted international students, over capacity, to the extent that the school had to rent out a private facility outside campus for some lectures. So some students were attending lectures in a cinema hall, and some of them had complained that there were no locals in their class. They were all internationals. And, that is not great for you as an international student because a part of being an international student is learning and, getting to learn the culture of the new country you are studying in. So definitely make sure to check on the location, accommodation, employment, and all that. It's very important. All right, so let's move on to mistake number two to avoid. So the first one we just talked about is all the mistakes are related to failing to do research. So mistake number two to avoid is failing to make accommodation arrangements on time, or arriving in the country without accommodation arrangements. And this happened to me only in my case. My visa process was delayed, and it wasn't approved until 1 week before classes started. Um, and I couldn't have possibly made that arrangement because at that time, the landlords required a security deposit, which I couldn't commit to, not knowing whether or not I was going to get approved or otherwise. So I arrived a few days before class started, and lucky for me, there was another student who had made accommodation arrangement but was denied visa. So his landlord took me in, and yeah, that worked out pretty well. But for you, make sure if you're still in process, definitely make sure to check to secure accommodation before you arrive. And mistake number three is deciding to go on a vacation or leave the country way before your program ends. And that in itself is not a problem or a mistake, but the problem comes in when you do so without checking if your visa is still valid for the duration of time you'll be traveling out of country. And yeah, it is important to note that your study authorization, your study permit, is not a travel document. It allows you or gives you the right to stay in the country for the duration of time that is indicated on it, or for the duration of time it takes you to complete your program. However, it doesn't grant you the right of entry or re-entry into the country. And in most cases, the visas that you are approved when the first time before you leave your home country gives you a single entry. Wait for me, please. Let's check the mail. Okay, so definitely make sure to check that. Make sure you're checking to ensure that your visa is valid for that duration of time. Else, if you decide to just travel thinking your study permit will allow you back into the country, then you are mistaken. It's only the United States. You can travel as far as the United States and be allowed to return into the country. But anywhere beyond that, you would need a visa. And apparently, a lot of students have found themselves in this mess. Sorry, guys, I'm getting my mail. Too many mails. Yes, so you definitely want to check that your visa is valid for that duration of time. So the fourth mistake to avoid is waiting too long to apply for work in your field of study. Especially for those of you who are going to be studying a one-year program or on a one-year study permit, don't wait too long for your program to end before you start applying for work in your field of study. In my case, I started applying right at the beginning of my second semester. I wasn't lucky to get a job right off the bat, but it gave me the exposure into what employers are looking for. And after going through a couple interviews, I was lucky to secure a job 1 week before my graduation. And this really helped facilitate my permanent resident process. And I was okay to apply for postgrad work permits right after my 1 year postgrad studies. And yeah, so if you know you're going to be on a 1 year study permit, make sure you start applying for work right before your program ends. It will help you get a good head start in a good time. The fifth and final thing to avoid is if for some reason you arrive in the country and you're unable to start classes, make sure that you informing IRCC about you missing school. So the worst thing that you could do is not to inform IRCC if for some reason you're unable to start class right away. Because if you don't, if you happen to miss school for some reason, without informing IRCC, they could request for you to leave the country. Provide an explanation. If you provide the explanation and they are not satisfied with, they could request for you to leave the country, and that would put you in a really bad situation, because once you get that order for you to leave the country, it's going to be difficult to turn things around. You may have to work with immigration lawyers, and the process is not going to be straight away or as smooth. So if you arrive, they have a few reasons, a couple reasons which they accept as credible reasons for which students could skip class, either for a couple of days or the whole semester or the whole year. And I think the one thing that they consider or that comes to mind in this regard is health condition. So if you can prove that you were unwell and hospitalized, or maybe there's a doctor's note stating, indicating why you should stay at home and not go to school, I think this is an acceptable reason. All right, guys, I hope you found today's video informative as always. Thanks a lot. Hit the smash the subscription button, and I hope to see you in my next video. Thank you.